Oh, you scared the hell out of me.
You scared me too. I'm like,
sorry, I just came in. I got a meeting at 6 o'clock.
I hit your mouse and that happened.
Oh,
I didn't touch anything
No, that's
else.
good. I'm actually glad. I was surprised when I walked in and I saw that the screen was up. That thing there, I didn't know if it was going to time out. I was in here earlier and I set this up because we're doing a virtual meeting and this is going to stream to YouTube. So I came in and again this afternoon when I set this up, I wasn't sure if that was going to stay running all day. So when I walked in, the first thing I noticed was the screen was up. I said, "Oh, I could see the little end stream button right here."
Oh, nice.
So I'm like, "Oh, great, everything's working the way it's supposed to." So it didn't even dawn on me. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I watched the table probably like 25 minutes ago. And
this computer here is one I use it for the security cameras and stuff, and it's kind of my desktop. So yeah,
I wasn't touching nothing else.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. Thank you for letting me know, though.
Yeah, of course. Have a good night.
You too. See ya.
The movie wasn't really doing so hot. Said the new producer to the old big shot. It's down on the edge of the great Midwest. Said we must tour forever is. Here look by, here comes the elephant pole. Bundled all up in his coat. Headed down south towards Illinois, from the jungles of East St. Paul. His manager sat in the office alone, staring at the numbers on the telephone, wondering how a man could send a child actor to visit in the land of the winter feather. Hey look, my, here comes the elephant pole, bundled all up in his coat. Headed down south towards Illinois, from the jungles of East St. Paul. Sabu was sad, the whole tour stopped. The airlines lost the elephant's trip. The roadie got the rabies and the scabies and the flu. There was low on morale, but there was high on. Hey look, my, here comes the elephant pole, bundled all up in his coat. Headed down south towards Illinois, from the jungles of East St. Paul. From the jungles of East St. Paul. From the jungles of East St. Paul. I could be happy. dream. Just as long as I got my woman. I can run, start naked, and live in an old oak tree. Just as long as she's with me, my woman. The cannibals can catch me and fry me in a pan. Just as long as I got my woman. I could get a little electric chair for a phony rap. I wish you love and happiness. I guess I wish you all the best. I wish you don't do like I do. Never fall in love with someone like you. Cause if you fell just like I did, you gotta walk around the block like a little kid. But kids don't know, they can only guess how hard it is to wish you happiness.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yes.
Should I set the alarm when I leave?
Yeah, go ahead and set it if you don't mind. I'm not going to be going out there.
All right.
Thank you.
Of course. Have a good night.
You too. See ya. One, two, three, four, five.
Adam, do you know how long this meeting's going to be tonight?
Hey, Tim, I hope it's going to be half an hour, but you never know, right? I would guess an hour-ish.
Evening, Pam.
Hi, Tim. Where are you? How come I can't see you?
Hiding. Trying to fix the computer.
I thought I was the only one who's going to be like showing up. Nobody just wants to see my face, that's for sure.
Everybody wants to see your face, Pam.
Not quite. Nice beard.
I'll show you mine when I'm done stuffing the last few bites of my dinner into my mouth. So, hi everybody. I'm going to leave this part off camera.
Are you having anything good?
Nice big stuffed BLT right now. Had to be quick tonight. It's really good.
That sounds delicious.
Jim, I haven't seen you without a mask on. You got quite a beard these days.
I
Yes.
know, that's what I was thinking.
I'm covering my face. I'm trying.
I guess it would be more crazy if you saw one of us with a beard after not seeing us without a mask. It's nice to wear glasses without a mask, though, I have to say.
Just wear a papper. You'll be fine.
A what?
A papper. One of the hoods.
Oh, yeah. No, thanks. Done that. Done that before. Been there, done that.
All right. Are we just about all assembled? I'm not sure if I should kick this off or who would like to take this meeting off. And it's 6:02. Like to be respectful of people's time, so I shall kick it off, I guess. Welcome everyone to the, what are we at today? March 9th meeting of the new EL Building Committee. So without further ado, Adam, if you're here, you want to start taking us through the agenda, please?
Well, what I will happily do is kick it over to Mark and Lisa and let them take us through the agenda.
Perfect.
Mark and Lisa, take it away.
All right. So I guess this, it's like I got the potato. I'm going to pass it on to Lisa here. So.
I feel like that's what I feel. I'm like, whoops, I think I have to kick the potato off here.
All right, I'm going to take
Oh,
this
no.
and request sharing.
Is everyone here that should that we're expecting to be here as well? Or are we waiting for a few more participants?
I think we're only missing Brian Wood and Sue Mercier.
Okay. Is it
Great?
All right, Mark, take it away. Thank you.
All right. Well, very good. I think Lisa is hoping to share her screen. I don't know, Adam, if that's your controls.
Should be all set now.
All right, great. Wonderful. So it was 1 week ago, Lisa's bringing up the agenda here, but it was 1 week ago today that we opened the bids, the long-awaited bid opening for the new school, and I think everyone is probably caught up on the sort of results of that bid opening, but we have a little more detail surrounding what that all means for the project, and so we're going to go through those details tonight, and so the agenda is about the bid results itself. We're going to discuss. We had on our November meeting, we discussed what the potential ad alternates would be if the pricing came in favorably. We will talk about value engineering, which, as we discussed prior, if the bids came in over what the allowable funds would be, we'd have to do some reductions in the scope, and that is termed value engineering. And then we'll talk about the timing of the award of the contract, and give you an update on the clerk of the works, which is the eyes and ears position for the architect during the duration of the construction. There's an aspect of a butters pool that has to be addressed. And also we'll talk about schedule and next steps, and when our next meeting will be. And so as we get through this, I think there's a lot to be excited about. And so we're so much closer to the reality of the new Edward Little High School. So I think I think there are multiple points along the way that we recognize the achievement of where we're at. This should be one of them. And so as we continue going through this process, this is a big step right here. So with that, Lisa, do you want to walk us through these agenda items?
Sure. We can pass it back and forth. I'll start with the bid results. So as Mark said, the bids opened a week ago today at 2 p.m. on March 2nd. We had 7 pre-qualified GCs on the project. We received 2 bids for the project. So those bids were from Art C. Dudley Contractor and Landry French Construction. The apparent low bidder was Art Dudley. And this is a lot of information on one slide, but essentially this is the official bid form. This can also be found on the new Edward Little building website. It's posted there as well, and the state will be posting it to the BGS website. But essentially what it shows is we have the 2 bidders that submitted their bids and the numbers to which we received from them. Both of them had received all the addenda and included their bid bonds. The base bid that we received from Art Dudley was $105,402,219. When comparing that to the base bid of Landry French at $108,500,000, the apparent low bidder is Art Dudley by approximately $3 million, give or take. We have the information on where their alternates came in, but essentially this was over our allotted funds. And so at that point, we did not take the alternates into consideration for determining who was the low bidder. We also noted which subs, filed subtrades they carried. And so that's these 4 columns over here. And then I'll walk you through the numbers. So construction budget, we had $99,446,355. We had what was called the bid contingency, and we talked a lot about this through the process. There was 2 different contingencies. There was one that we could use on bid day for any overages, and there's also a contingency that we set aside for during construction, any unforeseens or items that we have to deal with during construction that weren't part of the project. And then we had some project reserves, dollars that didn't necessarily, as we were reconciling the budget before we got final funding approval, or final approval at the state, different lines were under by a certain amount. So we put those in the project reserves, and that was $347,513. That subtotal came to $104,787,185.
Then there was a line item where we had allocated fundraising to support scope items, in particular the second turf field. That was accounted for in that 104,787, 185, or really the construction budget total. And so we don't have those funds right now, so we can't use that as sort of the allocated funds that we have to use towards the base. So the subtotal then becomes 104,295, 185. This fundraising piece we didn't recognize until after bid day, so the numbers have changed slightly to this 104,295, 185. So when compared to the low bid, we essentially have a delta of 1,117,034. And what we've been doing these past, week now at this point has been working with our team and the low bid contractor to identify what items we can modify to close that gap. And we'll get into that in just a second here. We'll quickly just look at the alternates to remind folks what those were so we can know going forward what is not part of the project because the alternates were not accepted. We won't spend too long on this, but again, just a refresher for everyone. There was, I believe, 14 or 16 add alternates. That second artificial turf field is not included. We had some accordion folding security doors that are not part of the project. The courtyard landscaping and hardscaping, sort of the more advanced package for that is not included. So it's minimal plantings and some simplified walkways. Theater system, these are just some reductions that some additional items to the theater system. It's not the whole theater system. And so that is not part of the project. Site athletic field and court lighting. The lighting at the baseball, tennis courts, and tennis field, or I should say courts, multi-purpose field, baseball field, and tennis courts are not included. The storage building out on the site was not included. Softball and baseball dugouts are not included. Rubber floor tile in the classrooms is not included. It does remain in the hallways. The exterior siding, the upgrade to go to the cementitious panel was not taken. It is a metal panel on the outside of the building for the base bid. Frames at classroom entrances, they are hollow metal instead of aluminum. Rulon system at the classroom nodes, it was a finish upgrade to go with the wood at those areas. It is an acoustic ceiling tile as the base. Roof protection board is not part of the project. Some of the skylights throughout the building are not included. The greenhouse is not included, but the site prep for that is included. The sunshades on the outside of the building aren't included. And then this last one, we have the mechanical controls in the building, but what this alternate was just to be able to look at a preferred vendor that the Auburn School District wanted to look at possibly going with. And in order for it to be competitive, we had to show what the increase in cost would be to go with that. So as a result, we went with the lowest bid contract for those controls. So that's just kind of a quick reminder of what's not in the project at this time. I'll pause there if there's any questions, and if not, we'll head into value engineering.
Lisa, you'll send us this PowerPoint. I'm particularly interested in the previous two slides that Tim and I can just mention to the council meeting.
Absolutely. Yep, I'll send it to Adam. He typically posts it on the website, or you can email it directly, whichever is preferred. Mark, do you want to take us through the value engineering items?
Sure, absolutely. So when we opened bids, and as Lisa mentioned, at the time we felt that there were about 0.6% over budget. It's a little closer to just above 1%. So still a relatively modest task to close that gap. And what we did was we looked into ways to reduce the scope without reducing the functionality or really the overall durability of the building or the site. And so, and this has been a cooperative exercise with the contractor, working with their subcontractors, and really working in a pretty quick fashion in order to come up with these values. And so we'll go down through each of them and their approximate values and the merits or the reasons perhaps why they were recommending these items for removal from the scope of the project. So the first is the acoustic window. There's an acoustic window that was specified between the sound booth in the back of the theater and the auditorium itself. It's actually something that we don't typically do because of the fact that it's actually an operable window, and there's an opportunity to actually open it up in order for the sound booth to be able, or the not necessarily just sound booth, but it's the lighting and sound booth in the rear control booth, in order to be able to actually hear what's going on out in the theater itself. So it was a modest savings, but it was also an item that wasn't necessarily needed. So that was a $38.75 saving. The next item is coil risers, and the theatrical consultant has specified coil risers. The school already possesses some for the choral program, so we removed that from the contract. The next one is exterior benches, bollards. This is in the front of the building. We had specified a product, and the contractor said they could find a comparable, durable product to these benches in the front of the building that would result that they could source locally. And so a lot of the savings actually comes from the fact that they didn't have to include the transportation to get it from where the specified product was to here. So their savings was $25,000 to be able to do that. So those were, again, it's an easy change because it doesn't impact the durability of the functionality or even the appearance much. It's just the contractor working with information they have about where they can source it. The next item is granite curbing. Granite curbing is a durable curbing material on the side of the roadways and drives, but it's a pretty significant price for it. So this changes the amount of granite curbing and replaces it with concrete, slip form concrete curbing in a number of locations. And so that's sort of the it's in areas adjacent to concrete paving, which or the concrete topping. So it actually is still a pretty durable curbing material, and it's an upgrade from asphalt curbing. So that savings was $59,500. The landscaping, we looked overall at the total landscape package that was specified for the building, and a reduction of $58,000. And the reason we've talked about landscaping before is that landscaping is an easy one to add in the future, and so there's sort of, it doesn't integrally become part of the building. It's sort of an easy add-on, and so we think we can look at areas and still have higher impact. So we're looking at the lower impact areas of where we will remove some of the landscape materials. The next one is one that is a change in material that doesn't affect functionality at all. Typically, we've always specified copper electrical conductors in the cables, and this is going to change that material to aluminum. There used to be, years and years ago, there used to be issues with the connections on the aluminum conductors. That has been solved for many, many years, but there's still sort of a prevalence of copper feeders as being sort of a specified items. Aluminum right now in the market is a lot less expensive than the copper, and so there's $190,000 savings just in that change. So it doesn't impact functionality at all. It's just simply changing the conductors and the connections of those conductors. The next one is ledge removal, and the site contractor went forward, and based on the information that we provided in the contract documents, they did a profile of what they believe to be the quantities of ledge, and so they, based on that quantity of ledge, felt they were willing to take on the risk by removing $78,000 for a ledge allowance, and say that they'll take care of all ledge based on sort of this revised amount. The next one is the flushometers in the building, and so these are at lavatories and at water closets, and so we have automatic flush faucets and flushometers at the toilets and the sinks. And what we typically, so these require electricity to operate, and what we have included in the contract was we have a circuit that runs to the faucets, and then we have a transformer, a little plug-in transformer that goes up to the faucet itself. There's new technology that actually puts a recharging wheel that actually spins and recharges a battery at the faucet itself. So it actually doesn't draw from the building electricity. It actually runs off of this little hydro-powered spinning wheel in the faucet itself. So when the water flows, it actually stores that electricity into a battery, and that's what's used to control the flushometer. So that was, between all the plumbing changes and the electrical changes, it was $61,600 for that change. Again, it's actually in some ways a little bit more green technology to do this, but it does require that there's a battery at each of these locations that stores the charge that has to be replaced in the future. The next item, we had a large conference room that's right outside of the guidance and the nurse clinic area that can be used for scheduling conference meetings for the entire school. It sits right above the entrance, and that we had shown a partition to divide it into two smaller conference spaces should that need to be. We've shown that as removing the partition. We're leaving all the infrastructure in place should there ever want to be the beam that supports it. So we'll leave that in there should there ever want to be a desire to add in a movable wall in the future to be able to subdivide the space. So the next one is paving, and what we have is there are a few areas on the site where we have a heavier base to the pavement, and that's where we anticipate there to be heavier loads by larger trucks and delivery vehicles. And so, and the contractor reviewed what we had specified for the base material, and they modified the first layer of the base from a 15-inch gravel base, and then on top of that we have a 3-inch. It's a type A gravel base, and then we have 3.5-inch pavement. So the depth of pavement didn't change. The base became a little shallower, but in doing that, there was a $51,000 savings to shallow up the heavy-duty base of it. So it still is a heavy-duty pavement. It's just a slightly less deep base on that paving. The next one is final cleaning. So the contractor, we put in the contract that they are responsible for going through and cleaning the school before it gets turned over. And the value for that, to seek alternate ways of going through and getting the cleaning done, that final wiping down of all the surfaces, is $85,000. That was their contract for someone to come and do all that final cleaning. And so that was an easy, discrete item that, again, doesn't affect functionality of the space. We have to figure out how we're going to get the space clean, but it was a way of taking that piece out to get us within budget. And before, I guess, we shift to the next slide, I'll pause for a minute if there are any questions on these before we move to the next list.
Mark, I won't have a question. I do have a couple questions, but they're only when you come to the end of the list.
Okay, very good. So the next ones are concrete sealer, and there are a number of spaces in the building that we don't specify a finish. We save money by not having to supply some type, and those are in such spaces as custodial closets and mechanical rooms, where we have mechanical equipment, air handlers, and whatnot. And we specify a sealer on that. It just helps. It's a little easier to clean up any dust or anything else that's on the floor. This would remove that sealer and essentially just have raw concrete. So it'd be similar to oftentimes, thinking of like a garage floor that doesn't have a sealer on it, just has the base concrete to it. So that's what that item 12 is. The next item that we had, in addition to the artificial lighting that we have in the high bay lights that we have in the gymnasium, we also carried some skylights, and so that was a nice green feature to have. So on bright days, we wouldn't necessarily have to run the lights, but again, what we did was looked at, okay, we certainly can operate the gym at full functionality without the skylights. They would be a nice to have, but they do have a cost. And so that was $22,600 savings. Item 14, we had along the student commons, the entrance to the serving space. The entrance to the serving space has a phenolic panel. It's kind of like a really heavy-duty plastic laminate, like a Formica, I think about, but it's a really a very durable panel that we put on the front of that. We also put it on the front of the cafe across from the library. And so what this does is it removes that, and we'll put painted drywall there. And so we will have corner guards to beef up the corners that are prone to abuse, but it takes the Trespa panel, that phenolic panel, off of the interior of those spaces. And that was $76,000. Again, doesn't change the functionality of the space at all. It just changes that appearance of that of those two areas. The next one is we had in addition to the concession building down by the stadium, we also had a separate ticket booth that was a small structure. And the thought was that we could sell tickets out of the concession building, and you could always add a ticket booth if you needed to in the future. But the value of that standalone kiosk building or ticket building was $14,000. The next two items are similar to what we talked about with the heavy-duty pavement, in that we reduced the base of the first layer of gravel to 15 inches, and so that's at the running track itself and at the tennis court base. So all the layers above that stay the same, and the wear course at the top stays the same. But it was identified by the site contractor as offering some savings by going to a slightly shallower gravel base. And then the very last item was an item that through collaboration with the staff, we understand there's some fairly new furniture in the school, and currently there's a line item for furnishings, fixtures, and equipment of $2 million. And so what we suggested we would do is, because you have some new furniture, relatively new furniture in the school, instead of having to use some of those funds to purchase it, we would shift the funds from that line item to cover some of the construction costs. And so that was just south of $300,000. So the total of those values is $1,117,034, which I believe, Lisa, that was the number that you had identified prior to as the delta we needed to close.
Correct.
And so that list of 18 items is what we've been working hard to identify to close this gap and be able to award the contract, and still, again, try to hold on to the integrity of the building and the site with minimal disruption to those.
Mark, none of these are caused to have to go back to DOE for any kind of approvals or anything. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're working. I should have said, one of the stakeholders that we've been working carefully with through all of this is the Department of Education. So so they are aware of the task ahead of us, and this is a process that they have done on many projects, and so they're aware of we're doing this. The most recent ones we will alert them to, but they are aware of where we're going with this.
Mark, if I may, and I may have missed this, but can you just state it publicly again one more time? How are these prioritized? We have 18 on this list. How are they prioritized? So go ahead. Thank you.
No, thank you, Karen. So in order to close that gap, we've been coming up with as many as we possibly can, and we would have to take all of these. And so it would be a matter of accepting all of them. If we don't, we have to go back and find other items to close that gap. And so, for instance, there have been a few others that have come up that we thought that we didn't bring forward because we weren't comfortable putting them forward. One of them was irrigation of the multi-purpose field. It's not a turf field; it's a natural turf, so it's not an artificial turf. There was a line item of $17,000 to install artificial to install the irrigation for that field. that's that directly impacts maintenance of the field and even potentially the longevity of the use of the field and the quality of the field. And so for those reasons, that one wasn't on here. And so there's been a little bit of sort of understanding the relative value of what was brought forward, and were we comfortable proposing that to you folks for recommendation. And so this list was ones that made that list of ones that we felt was the a way of, again, holding onto integrity and durability without really sacrificing a lot to get it. We're certainly reducing the scope somewhat, so there is a trade-off, but we did it in ways that we thought received the greatest value for you without incurring any substantial increase in maintenance or operating costs.
Great, thank you. Does anyone,
Can I ask a quick
more questions? But does anyone else have another question?
I just had a quick question, Karen. I get more of a comment. I feel like as I look through this, short of the gravel below the running track, the tennis court, and the and some of the pathways, a lot of these things are things that doesn't in my view doesn't affect the overall structure, and it's things that we could perhaps add at a later time if that's something we want to do. So my compliments to Mark and Lisa and your team for really trying to pick things that don't substantially change the project. So it makes sense to what I'm.
And it came out to exactly the right amount.
Well, so the issue is that the balance 18 was kind of used to balance. We had targeted $300,000 as kind of the line item for that amount, but we were able to bring it in just slightly under that to sort of, and that used to kind of match the delta.
Mark, can you bring us back? Let's go back to just for a second, and I hope these are going to be fairly easy numbers to pick up. What was the value engineering these reductions at? What was that total amount at the opening bid? What was that amount?
Oh, so so if we go back, maybe Karen, to what we had as a breakdown of the numbers. This right here. So the construction budget, if we go back to the state form, that the approved construction budget that the Department of Ed signed off on, that was the $99,446,355. Also built into the project budget, there's a contingency of 10%. That 10% contingency is split half and half. So half of it is split to use if we need to award the project. So it's there to buffer any market irregularities or spikes. And that's the $4,973,317. So that's that 5% of the construction value, half of the total contingency that the state carries. The other 5%, the 490, there's still a $4,973,317. There's still that amount to take throughout the construction itself for changes and unforeseen conditions and things that come up during construction. There is a project reserve line item in that total project budget of $347,000. That amount was sort of things that we didn't necessarily have to expend the full budgeted amount on, things such as, for instance, a survey. I'll just use as an example. So there was a line item we carried at the approved budget for a survey, and it came in a little bit less. And there were a bunch of these line items that came in slightly under, and so that filtered back into that project reserve, which became available to use towards awarding the contract. So the subtotal of those amounts right there was the $104,787,185. That initially is what we were looking at as being the available funds. What we, again, as Lisa pointed out, what we looked at in closer detail was there was the second turf field that was part of the approved total budget, but when we looked at it was being funded through the fundraising component, that we really had to back that out, because even though it was approved and should we have fundraised, we needed to include it, but we don't have those funds, so we just had to back out that amount. When we back that out,
sorry, this is a lot to take in, and for someone who doesn't follow this, let's just say
Please,
you're
yep.
speaking to a layman. So I guess my confusion and I guess my tangle is I was under the impression that you just mentioned the second turf field. I was under the impression the second turf field was included in the opening bid. And so when the opening bid came in, I think I'm just hearing something that maybe was a tangle in my mind, or did we cross our T's and dot our I's and making sure? I guess I just thought it was part of it, of that total opening of the bid.
So we have the field, the multi-purpose field. But
no, I'm talking about the second field, the second turf field.
So
I thought was included in.
It was carried as an alternate, and so we had it listed as an alternate from back in when we talked about it in November, and that the inclusion of the artificial turf on that second field was carried as an alternate because it was dependent on fundraising in order to convert it from natural turf to artificial turf.
Okay. Well, and I guess there's a $400,000 difference between what we thought the difference was a week ago. So
yeah, so that in some ways they're related, right? So when we looked at the available funds, and if we were to bring up the state approved budget, we would see that there were three columns. The first column is everything that the state is providing for the money. The middle column is we'll call it the local column, and that's all the things that the voters said they were approved for spending. Then there was a third column that actually had two items that were covered under it. The first of that was enhancements to the theater, and it was very early on in the process. The school department looked to be able to defer some of the funds that were being set aside for their CIP budget over the course, I think it was 3 years, and Adam probably has all the information on this, but that totaled about $1 million for the theater enhancement. In addition, there was $450 of construction value for the second turf field, and that was to be funded through fundraising or unused contingency. So, and Lisa, I don't know if you're trying to pull up that budget.
I'm trying to, yeah.
I think, and Karen, please, it will take as much time as we need to kind of get through this.
I think I appreciate your willingness to have a conversation with me through this, and I don't mean to disregard anyone else's questions just quite yet. I think it's this amount of money to be spent is something that I really am watching to the penny, and not to discredit anyone who hasn't taken us this far, but at the end of the day, I am where I am, and so I appreciate that. I have to answer some pretty big questions, and so I appreciate you taking the time to walk me through this, but also hope you can appreciate the fact that my eyes are all over this work. So, and as I would hope everyone else's are that's on this committee, and when you have questions and see discrepancies, or just, kind of tangle. So I do appreciate you taking the time, Mark. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Lisa, I don't know if you've been able to find that or.
Ignore the many things that are open on my screen, but I think this is what you're looking for, Mark.
That is it. Yeah. And someone else had a question as we were bringing this up as well.
I did. Hi. I was just questioning, when you say $492,000 for the alternate artificial turf field, are you saying that it's $492,000 for the artificial turf, or for the field, the entire field itself? Like, is there still going to be a second field without the artificial turf, or is it just the artificial turf that we're talking about?
Yeah, thank you, Pam. So that's the incremental cost for the artificial. There's still going to be a field. It'll be a natural. It'll be natural turf, irrigated natural turf field.
Okay, thank you very much.
So this is the first page of the budget worksheet that was approved, and this was approved in December of 2020. And so those are the three columns: the blue, the sort of rose-colored, and then the green column. And so if you look under 1.5A, and Lisa's going to sort of blow it up here so we can get a little closer. If you look at 1.5A, you'll see that there's an auditorium upgrade line item. And underneath that, a portion of it was part of the funds that the voters approved in the referendum. The second portion of that is the ones that come from the CIP bonding. So you'll see that, and that's been consistent from when we put all this together prior to the referendum. These numbers here haven't changed since we went to referendum. So that's sort of in that green column. And the reason it says 862, if you add on the additional percentages of design fees, and there's a few other adders, it comes out to an even $1 million. That's the first line item that we're talking about under that spending. The second item, if we go down to the next page, it's a little bit lower on there. And you can see that it's the second turf field. It was estimated at that time to be $450,000, and it was to be funded through fundraising. So the other thing to look at on this page is if you go down to the A construction total, the blue line right there, and if you look at to the far right, when we add up all of them, including the fundraising amount, we have that $99,466,355. That is the number that when we began looking at the bid opening, we said, oh yeah, that's the number of the available funds. And the state was actually assisting us in that. But what we should have looked at a little more carefully is the fact that we don't have that 450 to include in that. So we really have to back out that 450 from fundraising.
And the difference between the 450 and the I forget the number we had on the screen, is the add-ons below this that you don't see in that number. And that's different fees associated with that and different percentages that are carried on those numbers.
So now we'll switch back to the other screen. So that $99,466,355, which again includes the amount that was to be funded through fundraising. If we switch back to the PowerPoint, you'll see that that's the number, that first line item that we carried.
Mark, you quickly just touched upon the DOE. I don't know if that comes up in the agenda anywhere. I don't have it in front of me. I apologize for that. But is there a part where the DOE takes a look at what point does the DOE take a look at our budget? Have they done that yet? Have we got a green light? Anything like that? Red flags?
Lisa's actually talked directly to Valerie Cheng and Scott Brown on that. So Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, and David Lewis is directly connected with the DOE, and he's on the call here too. So,
like I said, I don't have I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me. So if you were getting to that part, just tell me. Hold on, Karen.
No, that's okay. We're happy to address questions as they come up. The DOE is working side by side with us. They're brainstorming all these VE items with us. They're watching the numbers. I had a call about the 492 with Scott Brown today. And so we just wanted to, they're watching and trying to make sure that we're dotting I's and crossing T's as we go. There will be a round of us sitting down with them, probably later this week, early next week, just to flush out the entire final funding budget with them, because that's what we need in order to get the bonding. And so all the balls are going simultaneously. They're right there with us in this process. So this is the first step, the VE items, making sure we have the budget line items. They, were the ones that flagged the 450 for everyone. And so that's why we wanted to try and get on top of it as soon as possible as we go forward. And not to say there might be other little things that come up as we flush that out, but we'll obviously communicate any of those items and continue to work right alongside them, but they're plugged in right with us.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions so far?
Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just curious if we do have a current fundraising total that we have in terms of what we've raised for just the general funds. I know there's some specific line items that were fundraised for, but How close or how far away are we from this magical number of 492?
I think we have $56,000.
Yeah, we're not very close to that number at all.
I'll clarify, we're not close. So I have a couple of questions about one, the referendum question that went through, and I guess we'll start there. Was this list of value added items run up against what the referendum question was in terms of what the public voted on and what they're voting for? Because in the there's project descriptions and stuff within the language that went out. Those are all rubbed together to make sure we're still giving the public what they asked for.
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. And we have been very careful, again, looking at that. And the state also looks carefully at that as we have itemized where the any of the cost savings come from to make sure that we're following along with the referendum question. So absolutely, that's been part of the calculus in coming up with this list.
Perfect. And the second question I had, in the actual question, it talks about the CIP from the school budget of $1 million and then 585-ish thousand of fundraising. So are both of those numbers in the spreadsheet you just had up? Because that doesn't show up here. It just pulls out that we're not having a turf field.
Yeah, exactly. And those numbers precisely line up with the spreadsheet that Lisa had on the screen. And so as I mentioned, there was a line item for the theater or the auditorium that had in parentheses, that was the CIP. That was the $1 million. If you take the construction value and add on the additional soft costs, that was $1 million for the theater. And then it was, if you added on a bunch of additional soft costs onto the turf field, that got to the 585. So that's exactly aligns perfectly with all these numbers. The state makes sure that we are holding to to your point, holding to what was presented in the referendum.
So the 80-ish thousand difference between the local funding that's listed there and what's on the referendum, those are the soft costs that are associated with adding or removing something. Okay.
That's exactly correct. And the logic here was that if we're not spending the amount on the construction, you don't incur the soft costs either.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I have a question, because I wasn't here when this all started, and I kind of came in halfway. The original fundraising amount was, as Tim said, $585,000. That was how much the school was supposed to fundraise. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, because there's rumors about 3 million, 2 million. I just want to make sure this is how much we need, is 585.
I will say, Pam, there was a lot of conversation at the time of the referendum that said anything above that means that you just wouldn't have to bond that amount of money. So that was sort of part of the public conversation at that time. But the amount that was carried in the referendum for the second turf field was the numbers you've identified.
Thank you.
So I have a follow-up question to that. So what is our point of no return for that? How long does Pam have to raise the $492,000?
So I guess I will answer in a couple ways. And Lisa can certainly impart any thoughts that she may have on this as well. The development of the fields isn't until it's one of the final stages of the construction. So we're going to build the new building first, then we're then move on to the fields. That being said, the amount of cost for a artificial turf that's been bid at this time is likely to change if you were to ask the contractor what it's going to cost a couple of years from now. And so just keeping that in mind. So that's, there's while they won't be constructing it for a little while, the price won't hold for 2 years.
So Mark, I want to ask a question. So I think it's important, as you alluded to before the referendum, when this was being discussed, even more so than fundraising, what was talked about was was using unused contingency to pay for that second turf field. At what point would we know if any of that is available to be used?
Yeah, that's another good question, Adam. So back on that budget that Lisa had shared, there's a contingent of the 5% contingency that we're saying is still there for construction. A portion of that is held through the state, the state side of the column, that far left column, and that's the state regulates what that is, and because they're careful to ensure that they're fair to all school districts that are building schools, and so they wouldn't necessarily fund artificial turf for a second field. So then there's a column that is the local contingency, that middle column, and that amount I don't have handy. Lisa may have what that is.
Yeah, I can look it up real quick.
And that, if you don't spend that during the construction, that becomes available to potentially use for something such as the second turf field. That's monies that were part of the voter approved bond.
Mark, I think I've got that number. I think it's 597,000 in that local column. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds absolutely right, Adam.
597,727.
So there's not a lot of thinking about, you take that cost of the second turf field, that almost would consume that entire owner's contingency, and we won't know until we get far along in the building to know approximately what might be left of that amount.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I just thought it was important to remind everyone that was a really large piece of the discussion leading into the referendum. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we'll continue to monitor that with the Department of Education as we go along. There's certain stages of construction, getting up out of the ground, getting steel erected, different things to where we will have really identified a lot of the unforeseens that typically eat away at the contingency. So there'll be different milestones that we'll check in with the Department of Education about the health of the contingency and where we're at in construction, so we can keep that as an active conversation.
And may I just mention about the whole fundraising thing? The previous city council, there was no concrete plan for fundraising. There was a desire to have a second turf field, and the costs were then put in there in the referendum if we could raise the money. The 1 to 3 million was just a number that was thrown out that would then reduce the cost of the taxpayer. So some of us were skeptical about this, but there was not an actual fundraising plan.
And for those of us who stepped into it, Holly, I appreciate hearing those words. But we have not dropped the ball completely. It's just bouncing a little bit right now. But there have been meetings there. We're not trying to be, we're not trying to drop anything, but we're trying to figure out how to do something on this scale. It's beyond the bake sales that Pam and I have run in the past. So we appreciate the patience, but thank you.
Well, again, I think it's important for the public to know as well that the current school committee was not a part of that discussion.
So, Mark, I have two other questions. One is, we see that we're a bit over budget on the bid. What happens if we run out of contingency money on the construction side? What happens if all of that gets eaten and we don't have a full school yet?
So the approximately $5 million that's available for the contingency, it would be it's extremely unlikely. I'll just put it that way. That would be entirely consumed by during the construction of the school. If we start getting to that point, then we'll have a conversation with the Department of Education. There are very, very few instances where that has even been the case. And so in the extreme unlikely event that we use all of that construction contingency, I think we would have to open up a dialogue with the Department of education to understand what steps would be taken. And again, that they would range from reducing more scope to going out to a separate bond for it. But again, it's extremely unlikely.
Okay. And the second part of that question, I guess, is when you went over the value engineering items that were on that list, the 18 of them, if at some point down the road we realize that, hey, we really ought to seal the concrete in the janitor's closets because it's going to save us X amount of dollars over the lifespan of the school, how do we get those items back in after the fact? If that's something that we all kind of decide that, that some little feature that we've taken away, we want to, do it. What's the process for that?
So thanks, Tim. And what we've tried to do is with just what all of these looked at how you could potentially include them back into the project. Some of them you can, some of them you can't very easily. The ones you can, for instance, sealing concrete is very simple. You just go in and you'd seal them. You hire someone to come in and just apply the sealer to the concrete. So that's a fairly simple thing to do. Some things, the skylights that we have shown, the question would be whether or not we have the steel curbing there or not in order for you to be able to add skylights in the future. So that's an item that's you almost have to make the decision now in order for the structure to be able to support those. And so that's an item, but most of them are things that are fairly easy. For instance, even the phenolic panels, you could go in and add phenolic panels. You would hire someone to come in and do that in the future. If it gets to the point where we're through a large portion of the construction and there are contingency funds and you've been very successful in fundraising, there may be things from the list that you want to try to fund through contingency or fundraising, and you could do that with a change order to the contract in working with the contractor.
So, Mark, what about just the scenario that I don't know if it would ever actually happen. However, what about the off chance that what happens to unspent funds on the project? For example, unspent contingency funds, or do we just keep going until we've spent everything if we have that, that, and I'll put problem in quotation marks.
Right. So as I think Adam was the one who quoted the funds that are on the local column of the contingency, and that was 597,000. I can't remember the exact amount. The remainder,
727.
There we go. The 4.4 million that the state has, if those aren't needed, the state takes them back, unless there's things again that they agree to fund back into the building, and so that's kind of the piece there. There are a couple other line items that with furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, and technology, and each of those line items is $2 million. And with those funds, you will likely come up with the list to spend all of that. That is extremely likely that you will want and to use all of that, and that's pretty typical that you will spend all of those line items. Beyond that, there's not a lot left of discretionary amounts in the budget that haven't already been accounted for. So those are really the areas: the contingency, the FF&E, and the technology line items.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have one more question. I guess my fear too is the things that we're getting rid of or that we're not doing because of money. And I completely understand being conservative with how much we're spending. But I also don't want to end up with a similar Edward Little than we have now, where it's been less than 50 years and we're replacing it. I don't want to have to put that burden on our community 50 years from now. So I want to make sure that, I guess, the things that we're removing are not going to affect, and I guess you have said this, they're not going to affect the quality, but I just want to make sure that the longevity of this building is there with or without the things that we're taking out.
Yeah, Pam, and I think again to that point, we've been very careful about the selection of the items that we've presented for everyone. We're still extremely pleased with the fact that the value of what the contract carries is really an excellent school. There's a sort of an image behind the numbers here on the screen, and largely that image doesn't change at all from the design that we've prepared for you. So we still have an excellent tile flooring throughout the entire public areas of the building. We have there's again, thinking about the full geothermal heating and cooling system for this building. That is a wonderful feature to have. All of the educational spaces we have, the career technology spaces, but the quality of the materials too is still held. We've held on to that carefully.
And I think, Pam, another thing is that it was a theme that ran throughout the discussions for the last 3.5 years that I've been involved in this, is to make sure not only that we are maintaining the integrity of this beautiful new building, but also that it speaks towards not just the present, but also the future and future use of the building and access and activity and, the CTI, the technical stuff that's going on. So, I feel very comfortable with what Herman and Mark and Lisa have come up with, but that was always a consideration.
Thank you. Again, I wasn't part of the initial conversation, so forgive me if I'm asking redundant questions.
I guess, Mark, I have a question with the alternates in terms of the second turf field and things of that nature. Of the ones that are omitted that directly impact like either students' athletics, performing arts, or curriculum, what is the hardest to put back in? So I kind of jotted down a few: field lighting, the greenhouse. I saw that you had utilities, so that's easy to like get another greenhouse structure built, it seems like. But the theater system and the dugouts, what sort of pieces would have to be put into the construction to make sure that these could work later on if they can't be in the original structures?
Yeah, thank you, Brandy. And one of the things that we were careful with the alternates too is looking at that. So, for instance, the dugouts could easily be constructed in the locations that we had shown them to be located. The lighting, we've even run some of the electrical feeders through paved areas and through the turf areas, so that actually allows you to go forward and add those more simply in the future if you want to do that to the tennis courts and the baseball field. And so I'm trying to think some of the other ones on that list, Brandy. As you said, the greenhouse, we've provided the pad for it. The ones that can't, for instance, there's the siding on the exterior of the building. We had an upgrade to a different siding material, and that was a significant amount of money. What we're providing is going to be durable and nearly as maintenance free, but it's a metal siding in some areas of the building. We're still putting a brick on the majority of the building, but there are some areas of the classroom that have a siding material, and so that item isn't one that you'd have to take off all of the siding and replace the siding to do it. So that's a little different in that it's not simply just you can insert it after the fact. And I'm trying to think, Lisa, are there some other ones that come to mind?
The sunshades would be another tough one to put on after the fact. They're integral to the construction of the building. Another one would be, we've talked about the skylights. The roof protection board could be put on when you re-roof. The frames at the classroom doors, changing those out is pretty involved to change those back to a different material later. Very durable material, what we've substituted it for, so there wouldn't necessarily be a need I think that's it. All the others can be done relatively easy after the fact. The only change would be probably the courtyard. We've simplified the walkways, so doing more complex walkways and getting concrete out there would be more complex, but adding additional plantings would be easy to do in the future.
Can I ask a question? The sun. I'm curious what's the alternative in the meantime? Like if those wouldn't be there and it's imperative to have something in place in the construction phase for it to be, what's going to be used in its place if it's not there?
So the sunshades are external. For anybody that doesn't know, they block down the direct gain of sun. It's more of a sustainable feature. There are blinds to be able to block out light so that you don't have glare and interruptions in teaching. But the sun shades that we're talking about are more of the external. You'll see them over windows. They almost look like blades to cut down on direct solar gain into the building.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
I just had a thought. When we bid this out, we're building an entire CTE section, and was equipment budgeted for this? And I don't know why I'm just thinking of this, or I may have missed this in previous conversations. But did we budget any CTE equipment in any of this?
So that I guess I'll start the answer, and then again, Lisa, I'm sure we'll kind of impart on some thoughts that maybe I missed. So the building itself, the contract that we're talking about here, and the amounts that were budgeted for the construction don't include, by and large, they don't include equipment for the career tech programs.
You said don't, right?
The construction contract doesn't.
Okay.
There's the two line items that I talked about that are derived as a percentage of construction, the FFE, the furnishings, fixtures, and equipment.
Okay.
And the technology, those two line items, which are approximately $2 million each. Those are just budget numbers right now. So we haven't gone through and said, here's how much it's going to be used for this program and how much it's going to be used for this program. Okay. So those funds are, that process will be something that we embark on with you and help going through the next several months to help nail that down. Also, there's an aspect of the career technology programs are a regionalized program. So the question is, those are also the list of equipment needed has been one that we've worked with LRTC to develop. And so I think there needs to be some level of conversation with them regarding where potential funds or potential donations in kind may be available for the equipment for the career technology program.
Okay. Sort of like I'm going to equate this to, I just built a really great house, and what do I have to move into my really great house? And what was budgeted to be built in? Did I view that as and I don't mean to, but to me, this is a level I understand. Did I bring it down to a built-in bookcase, or do I need to bring my own bookcase? Do you see do you see the difference that I was asking the question in there? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
and that's what I was thinking with the CTE equipment. Is that something that needed to be installed at the time of construction, and so therefore it was included in the build, in the build. But this is, I've got to bring my own bookcases.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Lisa, go ahead.
I mean, if you think of it, if that bookcase needed a certain outlet or a combination for water or things like that, we got information on that to include in the construction of the project, but the actual bookcase itself wasn't actually identified in a line item, if that makes sense.
It does, and thank you for following my train of
absolutely
there.
Absolutely. And that's something we'll work closely with Rob over at LRTC, and he was part of the development of all these programs and the equipment and everything like that. And so he has his different program budgets that probably go along with that in regards to some of the equipment that may may be allocated, but we'll work closely with him to identify what that is.
Is the DOE involved at all in those conversations around equipment?
Good question on the LRTC equipment. We'd have to circle back with them as to how involved they get into that. But DOE is involved with the whole process that we went through to create the satellite CTE at this school. And Rob was up at the state with us for meetings for that. So they're aware of all of that. But we'll circle back with them and ask the process on that.
You know, and I wonder if Karen, those are really, really good questions. And Rob Callahan came in initially and talked about his vision and what was necessary, and also what is going to be added to the whole regional CTE education because of what we're going to have in Auburn. And even, you know, with Pam's question about, you know, are we going to make sure that this really stands up? So I don't know what the right form is, but to have Rob come in and talk about that, it's really exciting when he talks about what is going to be innovative, what is going to be new, how it's going to align with what's happening in Lewiston, but add to it. There'll be some programs that are just in Auburn, some that will be in Lewiston. So it might be worth having him come in and have a conversation, whether it's with the school department or maybe something, or the school committee, or maybe something separate. It would be worth hearing from him, I think.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that.
I will just add, Karen, that the one of the most expensive programs to fit up is the culinary program. And so both the kitchen area of the culinary program as well as the cafe, all of the food service equipment is already included in the contract. So that is items that, or those are items that are included right now in the construction value that we have.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the conversation. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none at this point, Lisa, you want to bring us back to the agenda, if you would?
Absolutely. You want to go to the agenda or the next item in the slide deck?
Whatever's next, wherever.
Right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Rolling on to award of contract. So we have gone through the value engineering items, and so ultimately what we're looking for is recommendations to the school committee to enter a contract with the low bidder, which would be Art Dudley. The contract will be dated March 17th, which is the day of the next school committee meeting that we're on the agenda for, March 17th, 2021. And it would be for the construction value. And we've put 104,592,462. And what that number is what his bid was, plus the value that we're taking from the furniture line item to fold over to the construction side. And at the bottom, you can see the math. That's another $297,277 to get to that total. So that is really the ask of the building committee tonight to see if there is support to recommend that to the school committee. They meet on the 17th, and we're going to be working on the contract itself with Connie and Adam and the Department of Education and get that for further review ahead of time. But that's essentially the ask for the recommendation.
And so, Mark and Lisa, if the building committee so chooses tonight to recommend this to the school committee has a meeting on the evening of March 17th. So would it make sense then to enter into a contract onto March 18th? We need to approve it in the evening. I guess I fear.
Great question.
I fear bulldozers showing up on March 17th.
Yeah, they are.
Preempted the next part of the conversation.
So I was going to say, because then at what point do they need to take possession of the construction site? Because that will happen.
So you're getting into the meat of the PowerPoint here, but no, these are all great questions. We just talked about this today with the contractor and Connie and Adam, and there will be a representative from Art Dudley at that meeting on the 17th. And they will be there to sign the contract along with the school committee. and will be ready to mobilize the next morning. They're ready to go right now. And so essentially we're working with them to move as fast as we can. And essentially they would sign that evening, mobilize the next morning. And further on in our PowerPoint, I'll go over the phases of construction to show what phase one, remind folks what phase one includes, and what that means for the school site, as to what will not be used by the school site starting March 18th.
Okay. The school will have mobilized parking. There's a lot that's going to have to quickly happen. If they're waiting on Western Ave right now with their equipment ready to come in, the school department needs to be ready to go. I would think that they would be, but I also do know that we delayed opening bids by a week, so I didn't know if we were. I don't mean to say behind, but already, I understand contractors have everything's lined up. So I just want to really make sure that we understand dates and understand what we're committing to and when we're committing to those things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So at this point, this is the question in front of us then at this point, does the building committee, so when we say you, I just want to be perfectly clear right now, the you is the building committee that is on this call this evening, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I think I just wanted to make sure that that I had that correct. So if I understand this right, the contract would be signed if the school committee approves the evening of March 17th, and so they will not enter the property until we have contract signed in hand that evening.
Correct. They will, and I can clarify the text on here on the fly. Let's see.
While you're typing that, so the alternative to this question is, would I like to have you value engineer a whole bunch more out of the school and go with the other contractor, right? Like, that's my alternative.
Yes.
Okay.
That's an alternative, or rebidding the project is an alternative. Those would be kind of the two other alternatives that you would have at this time. And we can talk about the pros and cons of those, but
and just want to put it out there, that's all.
Tim, that would, just to clarify, make sure I have that right in my mind, that would be another $3 million that we would have to then go ahead and put on the value engineering. We would task Lisa and Mark back with another $3 million if we were to get to that point.
And this contractor has been pre-qualified, so this contractor is qualified. It's not someone that's used to doing siding on residential homes now trying to build a $100 million project. This contractor is qualified to do this scope of project.
Yeah, Jonathan, they do several school. In fact, they mostly just do public school projects in the state of Maine.
So if there's anyone who'd like to pursue the
Thank you.
conversation that Tim kind of put out there, I would say speak now. Tim shaking his head.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure I knew what the alternative was before, instead of having an easy question, I want to make sure, that we're all aware that, the alternative to those are not any better at all.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you lobbing that one out there. So at this point, I would ask that you now, Dr. Brown, I'm going to lean on you. Is this let me see, I just found the agenda. Looks like you have motion on here. So am I understanding that this is something that I would need to ask for a motion and a second and then a vote? Yes.
So moved.
Okay. So here's what I get to do. I get to lob that to the official considered the secretary of the school committee, which is the superintendent. So I have absolutely no idea who said that as a first. I have no idea who said that as a second. I have absolutely no idea. So if you would maybe type in the chat if that was you, or say hey, because you are like one strip across. I can't see all of you.
Thanks, Karen. I can't see everybody either. I can see one strip beside the PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, I would say, if you, Tim, Can you make a motion? Thank
So
you.
moved.
Pam Hart, can you second, please?
No, we lost Pam.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor. So if you would please put your hand towards the screen. Dr. Brown, give a thumbs up. Dr. Brown, click the arrow going sideways.
It looks to be unanimous.
All right. Wonderful. Motion passes.
So recorded.
All right, excellent. So Clerk of the Works update. For all those that may not know what a Clerk of the Works is or don't remember descriptions in previous project, Clerk of the Works is the eyes and ears of the design team on the site. They work very closely with the architect, the Department of Education, as well as the owner. They are there every day to see different things happening, be able to witness construction that happens, once the earth is opened up and is happening underground, witness different tests. They are there to observe and record and report back to the architect for us then to communicate any things that may be deficiencies on the site or things that are happening. It also serves, they have daily reports that they submit to us as well as weekly reports. So we have record of what is happening on site, who is on site, and that things are happening according to the design intent. We had 14 applicants, which I think is a new record for us, for the position of Clerk of the Works for Edward Little High School. We had narrowed that down to three that which we interviewed yesterday afternoon, and the announcement of the award will be at the next building committee meeting. We are about to enter into some contract negotiations with the selected individuals, so we will be able to share more at the next meeting, but really exciting to be at this part of the process and be very close to having our clerk on board. So we will report more at the next meeting.
Lisa, can I ask just I do apologize for all these.
They're great.
Questions. My question being, the Clerk of the Works, will the Clerk of the Works also work with the administration staff at EL as well? And help, I guess, in just some of the high school preparations that they have to go to? They're running a high school, right? Students, kids. Does the Clerk of the Work support some of these moving parts? Or I don't know, Scott, I don't know if you have, crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's and have figured this all out already, but is there an opportunity for support for it?
Yeah, so the Clerk of the Works is not the person that would be doing that. They're more there to observe and record. We do have an owner's technical representative, David Lewis, who was on the call a little earlier, I think had to step out. But he is, his position is funded through the project. He is working closely with Adam and others to really kind of walk people through this process, be able to provide recommendations, and work closely on what is happening. As we get under contract here, we'll work closely with David. David will work closely with Scott and Billy and others to really spell out, okay, this is what is about to happen. This is what we need to be ready for. And we're just about at that point where we'll start to really get into the details. Everything's happening very fast right now, but we'll work with them so they understand when certain areas are coming off site. And we have had a couple conversations with Scott and Billy, just giving them a heads up that we'll have those conversations soon. It's coming. We had actually, at some point thought it may even come a little earlier than it did. So it's been in the back of the minds of Scott and Billy, I'm sure. But now we get into the details. So between us and the owner's project representative, we'll be the ones that are really working with them to map out what is coming down the road, what to be prepared for. The contractor also will be communicating with those that are on site. Contractors there every day. There's provisions in the contract that they need to alert the owner or the principal on site of things that are going to be happening that might be loud noises or things like that. So there's many layers of communication that will be going on. And some of it just takes a little bit for us to kind of work through and make sure that all the lines of communication are up and running. But within a couple of weeks, we get there and we have it all ironed out between all the team members.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to make sure there's some support there for the building itself while they're living through this.
Absolutely. So the next item, the neighbor's pool. Adam, do you want to speak about the neighbor's pool? You might know the most about the neighbor's pool. I have a visual here, if that's helpful.
Sure, I can do that. So we became aware a little while back that one of our neighbors did in fact have a pool that is on the school department property, and that's in an area that will be needed by the contractor in the retaining wall. So the city has been formally in communication with this neighbor, and plans are underway to hopefully have this removed in time for the start of the project. It will be removed one way or the other, but that communication has been made, discussions are ongoing, and all parties are aware of the need to get this done. So we just felt it was a good idea to inform you as the building committee of this in case any questions came up, concerns, or anyone saw the pool or was concerned about. We wanted to make sure you were all aware of the situation and all had the information.
I have a quick question. And again, I might have missed it. At whose expense is the pool being removed?
As of right now, it is the owner of the pool's responsibility to get it out of there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, we have schedule and next steps. So the next steps are we have the school committee meeting on March 17th, 2021. On that night, we hope to award the contract to Art Dudley and have the signing of the contract. Then we roll hours later into the site logistics start. We are under construction the next morning. So a lot of the conversation between now and then is, to your point, Karen, around site logistics. So the two big things for us right now are site logistics and contracts, all trying to get dialed in by the 17th. And then we want to talk about groundbreaking ceremony. So that's the exciting part. Thinking about what is the date that we have groundbreaking, and it doesn't have to be the first time the contractor breaks ground. It's more of a celebratory moment for any of those that haven't been part of one. It's a great time to socially distance yet bring people together. We could broadcast it as well. Some communities, go forward with having golden shovels. Several communities involve the kids in the process. There's many ways to which we can go about celebrating this very momentous occasion and making sure that we have the proper groundbreaking, but also talking about what those dates might be for it. And it doesn't have to be during these, well, it's actually warming up right now, but I was say cold months. It can be at a time that the group thinks is best. We'll open up, we'll first go to site logistics because we do have an image to show everybody on what those are, and then we can circle back on dates. So if people want to start just brainstorming on some potential dates as to what those might be. What you see in front of you is the site plan with the 5 phases of construction. The longest phase is this phase 1. And you can see this dotted line comes right up against the building all the way over here. So we do take offline the tennis courts and this parking and drives back in here. And that is starting March 18th. And that will go through August 2023. The next phase from there, is phase 2. The contractor has the option to start doing some of the ledge removal up there for the softball field. The phase 3 starts in November 1st, 2022, and that's starting to do the site work around the stadium. Phase 4 is where we start to, the building is constructed. You guys are starting to occupy the new building. Phase 4 is prioritizing the demo of this portion of the existing building so we can build the new parking lot of the new building as fast as we can over here. And then phase 5 is the rest of the remaining site areas. So the big one to think about right now is this phase 1 and really how that impacts the function of the school, really impacts, you know, sort of the site circulation, vehicular circulation at this point. But Scott and Billy and Adam and Connie will work closely with you guys and the contractor even before they mobilize to talk through what to expect, what they'll be bringing on site, you know, that first day, when the fences go up, that type of thing. But we should be ready for the fact that their construction fence will essentially follow this dotted line starting March 18th.
Lisa, this is really great, but I wonder if it can be added to this when students will be occupying the new building. Would that be in September 2023?
Yep, that would be. So at the end of, these are kind of overlapping phases, so it gets a little muddy, but essentially phase 1, which is the new building, ends August 1st, 2023. So you will actually, that's final construction. So you will be able to occupy, I believe we have in the contract in July, the building occupants can start to move in to set up the school for the start of fall 2023 classes.
Can that be reflected in this slide? Just because I think if people are just quickly looking at something, they're going to want to know, when is my kid going to be in the building as a teacher? When am I going to be able to go in there and set up my classroom?
Absolutely.
Can I just say something about the groundbreaking ceremony? I have no dates or anything, but one of the things I was wondering if we could, just a suggestion, is because you talked about having students there. What about maybe the first class to either graduate from Edward Little, the new Edward Little, or students that are going to be there from, you know, freshman to senior year? That would be kind of special to have, you know, those kids there to help us break ground. I'm sad that my children won't be able to partake in this new school, but I think it would be kind of neat to have the kids that are going to be there be part of this whole groundbreaking ceremony. Just a suggestion.
To piggyback off what Pam's saying, maybe we could have representatives from all the schools, you know, have a smattering of all the ages that way, you know, because they're all eventually going to go to here. So that way we can have it be a little bit more bolsterous and fun.
Sure. I think as far as dates go, one of the things I think might work out is perhaps a few dates can be sent out and we can, you know, click, I guess, do sort of some type of like or would you like that decision tonight? I'm thinking Google form, what dates work best, and have an answer within the next couple days. Or was that something you would like to hammer out tonight? Or, well,
yeah, I don't think we have to have a date tonight. I think we can start sort of the brainstorming, let ideas start to percolate, and then to your point, send out a Google Doc or a doodle poll to figure out what dates work best, and you know, have people start to look at the different events that are happening across the community to make sure there aren't any conflicts and things like that.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Is it something that we have to be of in terms of outdoor gatherings and capacity limits?
Oh, it all will be. Yeah, it will all be CDC, DOE, absolutely everything. It'll be outside as well. And so I think if we push it further, we can have more people there being outside based on recent guidelines, CDC guidelines that came out a day or two ago. So
and they're increasing.
So sure. Yeah.
I was also thinking of that too. And I think if we waited just a little bit, the weather will be better and more people will be vaccinated. Yahoo. And a lot of the teachers will hopefully be vaccinated. And so that might be, and like you said, it's going to be outside. So I think that's a great idea. I think it'd be nice if we waited a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I wonder if there should be a sort of a subcommittee, depending on how involved we want this to be. If you're scheduling kids from schools, should there be I mean, this is a big deal. Should there be activities? Should there be music? Instead of just picking a date, I wonder if it's worth it to sort of pick a group to begin to think holistically about what we want. And the date might sort of depend on that.
Holly, I'm kind of chuckling because no one who enters any type of PD with me offers those brilliant suggestions, because guess who becomes in charge of those brilliant suggestions? That's a brilliant suggestion. And so I am absolutely loving the way you're thinking. And so we'll be tapping into you for that, for that help. I think it's a brilliant suggestion. Absolutely. So thank you for that.
We've seen it to where different classes, do different songs or different skits or speeches or whatever the case may be, and have the kids actually do the groundbreaking itself, and we've seen all different ages represented, so have fun with it. It's a really exciting time.
Thank you. It's a big deal for our community, so thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone, so our next building committee is to be determined at this point.
Oops. Yeah, to be determined. So we can, let's see, that last slide, the dates were wrong. So I apologize for that. We'll go to the school committee on the 17th, and then we'll be under contract and construction will have started. We can meet a month from now just to provide an update, and see, be under construction at that point. And maybe check back in on groundbreaking dates and any other updates, and then figure out what from there our rhythm of meetings will be during construction. There's not too much to report on, but it is good to keep the committee up to date on progress, especially around communication and things like that. So we can meet in about a month if that makes sense to everyone, or we can push it out a little further too.
Okay, we may sort of look to you in another couple weeks and say, are there any big updates right now that we should let the building committee know? And and if not, we can just assume that things are still just kind of moving along, but not much to report out on. So
absolutely, yeah.
I'd like to just take a minute to just thank all of you who have been here from the very beginning of all of this. It's a couple of years in the making. So to those of you who have been a part of this, thank you so much. It's a privilege to jump in for those of us who are new. And I will still say, even after over a year, I still consider myself very new to this. So thank you so much for all the work. I'm excited for these kiddos. And I, like you, Pam, have a son who will be leaving in June of 2023. So he gets to live his last 2 years in watching full construction mode, watching the big trucks out the window. So thank you, everyone. And I appreciate you coming here and devoting your time to this as well. So thank you. All right. I think we're good.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.